We welcome you to Nashville Superspeedway, where earlier today we had a terrific, horrendous thunderstorm roll through. The track is dry, but guess what? More rain is on the way here for the Firestone Indy 200, so we'll make no bones about this. We are in hurry-up mode because the Indy Racing League wants to get this race started as soon as possible. And we welcome you to Firestone Race Day, where we'll get you caught up on as many of the stories as we can before we go green here at the 1.3-mile oval at Nashville. Let's first bring in Jackaroo.
Well, Marty, remember 1 week ago, the points leader, Scott Dixon, had a terrible afternoon in Watkins Glen when he got connected in a late warm-up during caution, and he spun his car out and collected Ryan Briscoe in the process. Tonight, Scott Dixon will start in the third row, and he hopes to change things and maybe get some of those points back that he lost last week. Right now, he and his crew are ready for the command. Let's check in with Brienne Pedigo.
Thanks, Jack. Leading the field to the green flag tonight will be Helio Castroneves, who's hoping to convert his first pole of the season into his first win of the season as well. And Vince Welch, if he can lead lap number 1, it will be the very first lap Helio Castroneves has ever led at Nashville Superspeedway.
Well, and Brienne, if Helio leads the first lap today, he will have beaten the 7 car of Danica Patrick to corner number 1, because Danica will start outside Helio on row 1 tonight. In fact, it's her 9th career front row start and her 2nd this season. I spoke with Danica before she got in the car. She said she's very comfortable and confident here at this racetrack. 3rd place last year. Her car's been one of the fastest all weekend long. She believes that this could be the night where she gets that 2nd career victory. Marty?
All right, thanks, guys. As that is going to wrap it up for Firestone Race Day. When we come back, we'll get the command and we'll get this race going, because the rain is on the way here in Nashville. Stay with us. Back here at the Nashville Superspeedway, we are just moments away from getting the command to fire the engines. Let's take a quick look at the top 5 in points. Scott Dixon has 48 in the advantage column over Helio Castroneves, and Marco Andretti made the big move last week, punching his way into the top 5. He's 129 markers behind. It is still anybody's championship in that top 5. Let's send it trackside as off into the distance. The rain is threatening, so let's get this race started tonight.
Race fans, it's time for those most famous words in motorsports. Please welcome back your Grand Marshal from the Nashville Predators, Dan Ellis, as he gives the command.
Drivers, start your engines.
Engines have come to life, although we have learned from our reporters in pit lane that the 14 car of Darren Manning, coming off a career best 2nd place last night, does not have an operational air jack. They have been working on it. They will be manual with the jacks all night. It's going to hurt them. We'll watch that story as it continues to develop. Let's take a look at the other news and notes of the series. For the 3rd time this season, Larry Curry is moving. He left Roth Racing. He is now director of competition for Dreyer and Reinbold. And they are down to a 1-car effort tonight. No Jay Howard, just Marty Roth in the 25. And EJ Vizo and the team not here. They are quarantined. EJ came down with the mumps last week right after the race at Watkins Glen. And about over 100 people have been tested here to see if they have the antibodies needed to fight off the mumps. And the big day for everybody else is July 15th, so a lot of people are holding their breath. Take a look at our Firestone grid across the top. You'll see the front row, as we mentioned, Helio Castroneves, and, of course, Danica Patrick. Let's quickly get caught up on the other stories from pit lane. Let's talk a little bit about last week's winner. How about it, Vince Welch?
Well, Ryan Hunter-Reay has had a crazy week. Said he spent the week nonstop in New York with Izod, promoting the fact that he is the most recent winner in the IndyCar Series, the fourth first-time winner this season. He struggled with his race car here this weekend, however, until the last practice session prior to qualifying. They found it, and he'll start on the second row tonight, Jackaroo, and Ryan Hunter-Reay believes he might get win number 2 tonight.
Well, Vincey, if you believe what athletes tell you, they like to get warmed up. And in case of a race car driver, you like to drive. So what did Marco Andretti do? He traveled all the way up to Lime Rock Park to run in the ALMS race today. Ran as high as 5th after starting last because he had not practiced with the car. Helicoptered in here, and he is strapped in the seat of his car tonight. The Oh So Fresh Special will be going for the front because it's the same setup, Brianne Pedigo, that Marco shared with all of his fellow drivers.
Jack, this is the 8th new track that Graham Rahal has visited so far this season. And at times, the learning curve has been quite steep, but things are looking up for Rahal. He qualified within the top 10. His car's been consistent all weekend. But with DNFs at both ovals that we've last visited, the goal tonight for Graham Rahal is simple: finish strong. But more importantly, Marty and Scott, he's got to finish.
Absolutely, and he will be in that number 10 slot. You notice Marco Andretti in the 11th position. He had a note from the principal. He's okay. It's not like NASCAR where you miss the driver's meeting and you go to the back of the field. He will stay 11th. Let's talk about what to watch tonight.
Well, concrete racing surface, Marty. Very bumpy here. Everybody knows that it's very hard to get a car working around here. Don't overdrive it, because that's when you find yourself going into the wall. Segment consistency. All the drivers and teams are worried about 50 laps of fuel load gets you around here. You have to be running strong throughout those 50 laps. Don't back it up and go off pace. And passing and track position. Passing will be difficult. They all say catching the person in front is one thing, passing is another. One-lane groove racetrack, and it will be difficult to get that done. Track position, be up front towards the end.
Well, the rain washed away what rubber we had laid down. We did have a 77-lap Indy Lights race just prior to this event going, and Anna Beatrice set a new record, becoming the first woman to win in that. We'll talk more about that a little bit later, but here comes Helio Castroneves leading them to the green flag.
Green. Inside, you're clear. Inside, clear.
On board with Ryan Hunter-Reay. Helio Castroneves got a great start. He's out in front of Danica Patrick, Hideki Muto, and Ryan Hunter-Reay. That's your top 4. And look at this, some slicing and dicing already. There's Dan Weldon, the 10 car, and Tony Kanaan in the 11.
Boy, that certainly wasn't a 2x2 start with everybody starting to slip and slide around here very early on. They know this race might be shortened because of rain once past half distance. This is not going to be sitting back anytime soon, guys. This is going to be flat-out racing.
And you can see Weldon, that high line just isn't there. And we can tell you, Helio Castroneves did lead lap number 1, so he now has only one track left where he's never led a lap. And that is Sonoma, coming up later this year. On board with Weldon.
Yeah, the sparks coming off the car, always sort of cool to look at. Those rub plates certainly making a lot of sparks for the cars all the time, just coming up towards the driver's face.
Oh, and a collision. That is the 6 of Ryan Briscoe and the 26 of Marco Andretti. And is everybody else going to get through? Barely. And that infield section is oh so wet.
Are you okay? You okay?
That's Roger Penske you're hearing trying to get to Briscoe's car.
There's the damage on Briscoe's car. He had nothing to do with this one. Again, like last week, where the spin by Dixon ended up with the problem. There is Michael. He may be rethinking this double duty business already.
Well, we don't know what happened, but cars are definitely different between how an American Le Mans Series car finishes, or feels rather, compared to this type of car here, the single-seater car. Jackaroo, you have more on Ryan Briscoe?
Right now, the plan is for them to put 4 new tires on Ryan Briscoe's car and then survey the damage and get back out. They're going to take advantage of this caution period, but they're going to do it the best way possible, and that's to see what the damage is. Ryan Briscoe limps down into his pit stall. Roger Penske has called the shots. Obviously, there are problems with the car. It actually stalled when he came to a stop. And you know what, guys? He's getting out. It's over for Ryan Briscoe. Vince?
Well, and the same fate for Marco Andretti as well. Andretti communicated immediately with Ziggy Hargis, who handles the strategy that knocked the wind out of him at first, but he's okay. I spoke with Marco just before he got in the race car tonight, and I asked him if he was fatigued in any way. He said, no, I felt great. Looking forward to a good night tonight. obviously comes to a close for Marco Andretti. This will be his 5th DNF for the season.
All right, as you can see, the dejection underneath the helmet of Ryan Briscoe. He cannot believe some of the misfortune that has befallen him the last couple of weeks. Let's go back and take a look at this. Oh, wow, did that thing
Marco Andretti, the back end just steps out. He does a great job catching it, but then it just walks up the racetrack. Watch this on the low side. The car's just bottoming out. Not sure if it hit so much. It took the rear wheels off the ground just for a moment, but certainly the car just stepped out from underneath. And remember, all these cars are just slicing underneath, and you get those decisions at 180 or 200 miles an hour, Marty.
Well, we mentioned, as you see it again, how wet that infield grass is. I mean, once you hit that, you're just skating along. Look at this. Whoa.
The other thing I noticed, when those two cars impacted the safer barrier, you could see the safer barrier start to move just a little bit. And although you never want to meet with the wall, it's amazing how we classified those as soft walls, how much they certainly do move.
Looked like Enrique Bernoldi might have gotten some debris. Let's go on board with Vitor Meira.
You hear Meira get back on the gas as soon as he sees everybody moving up top. You get back on the gas to pass the accident. We're on board right now with Darren Manning.
I think we are last on that. How many laps on the 6th?
Take one more look at it. I mean, this thing just snapped on him so quickly.
Yeah, in those young hands, very talented driver, catches it. And if there was nobody beside him, Marty, he would have just carried on. But unfortunately for Ryan Briscoe, he's on the top side. You see the sparks coming out the bottom of the car, is just touching the ground just a little bit. But then it just steps out just so quickly, and he collects it. Unfortunately, Briscoe is right there on the outside.
And look at Ryan Briscoe. And can you blame him after what has happened the last 2 weeks? Remember the beating he was taking after Indianapolis, and then he comes back and win at Milwaukee. I'm thinking he was feeling the same thing tonight. Maybe after last week's problem with Scott Dixon, he'd come back with another big performance, but it's not going to happen. Helio Castroneves is leading after 6 laps of 200. ESPN's presentation of the IndyCar 200 at Nashville brought to you by Firestone, the first name in Indy racing, and by Honda, sole engine supplier for the IndyCar series. Well, the skies look good right now, but the rain is off in the distance. We're under our first caution as an early incident has taken out Ryan Briscoe, and Jack Arut's caught up with him.
Ryan, no warning there. All of a sudden you were wearing Marco Andretti.
Yeah, I mean, such a shame we can't catch a break right now with the 6 car, but you know, I think all of our pressures were still coming up, and we're all lifting and just waiting for the tires to come in. And you know, I think you know, the car just spun unexpectedly on Marco, and there was nothing I could do to avoid that. So.
Did you see it? Were you seeing it out of your peripheral vision when he bobbled that way?
Yeah, I saw him coming up into me. You know, I was up on the outside and giving him plenty of room. You know, we're running side by side, but certainly not, you know, to the limit. And you know, the next thing I saw, he was coming up into my side pod, and that's it.
Now the crew has rushed the car back to the garage. There's some talk that they may try to make repairs and get you back out.
Yeah, you know, this is Team Penske, never give up. So, you know, any points we can salvage tonight, you know, we're going to try to get, and hopefully we can get back out there and do what we can.
Thanks for bearing with us. Guys, let me update you on his teammate, Helio Castroneves. He may be leading, but he is concerned that he may have hit a piece of carbon fiber with the front of his car. Brienne?
Marco Andretti just been released from the infield care center. Marco, was there any indication what happened in the car?
Yeah, I just got loose. You know, I feel so bad for the Oh So Fresh boys, but also Ryan Briscoe. Obviously, he was an innocent bystander. I might have gathered it up if he wasn't there, but obviously I just collected him, and simple driver error.
You've had a busy day. This is your 2nd race you've started. Are you okay physically?
Yeah, I'm gonna be feeling that hit tomorrow for sure. But you know, this morning's race didn't contribute to that driver mistake. That just got loose, and that's what happens.
Guys.
All right, as you finish up down there, take a look. Maybe Helio, did he catch some debris? Yeah, right off the front nose, but I don't know if it was bad enough to do any damage.
Now, they do have sensors on those tires, and they get a signal back to the pit lane, so the engineers will be able to tell if the tire pressure is going down. If that was the case, he certainly would have been in. during that caution period.
Now remember, all the teams know what we know. The rain is potentially on the way, so the race is really to lap 101. We're getting ready to go back to green here on lap 12 of 200. Danica Patrick, look out. She looked like she came up in front of Scott Dixon. Remember, Dixon was upset with her a couple of races ago, called her a menace. And the league says you may take one position, then you got to hold it. And we have word from race control. They have told Danica, keep it straight. So as we come by this time, take a look at the battle tightening up for third, fourth, and fifth. That is Dixon, Hideki Muto, and Tony Kanaan. Muto in the 27, his teammate on board with him right now, TK.
You know, Danica Patrick's not been one of the strongest drivers on restarts, but sometimes you run different gear ratios in your car. You sort of set it up to go running at the high side for fourth, fifth, and sixth, as we see Tony Kanaan right now just working over his teammate. But the other side of it, too, is that you have to make sure you are on top of it before the green comes out, and she's getting better at that, but not one of the best as of yet.
On board again with Tony. Remember, he crashed out of this race last year on lap 35, trying to go around a car on the high side. Vince?
Not just last year, Marty, but he's DNF'd the last 3 years here at Nashville, and that followed his win in 2004. So he's had the best and the worst of the Nashville Superspeedway. But he tested here just a couple of weeks ago, and HER as a team felt that was one of the reasons they've been fastest all week, or certainly one of the fastest teams as a foursome. And Tony Kanaan, always a factor at this racetrack, at least when you go back to 2004, right?
Yeah, that's the year he won it here. His last lap at 197, the leader, Helio Castroneves, at 199. And here he goes underneath Hideki Muto for the position.
When we were on board with Tony just a moment ago, I saw him working the toggle switch on the steering wheel and looked like he was probably going to turn around and move up the soft limiter so he could change that and move that up to make the engine run just a little higher in the RPMs.
We mentioned 2004. There it is as he came across the finish line to take the checkered flag. But as Vince pointed out, since then, it has been, well, less than a guitar playing performance at the Nashville Superspeedway for TK. He has pulled away now from his teammate Hideki Muto. He's about 1.8 seconds behind the race leader, which is still held by Helio Castroneves. He's got a half a second lead over Danica Patrick, and there is Scott Dixon, the points leader, closing in again on Danica. So as you take a look at Scott Dixon, let's check in with Jack Arute.
Scott Dixon's got a bit of a scare. He just radioed into his crew. He wants him to check the telemetry. He said, Scott Goodyear, that he feels like he's having a problem with his gears. You know what that means when he's shifting up and down, shifting back from sixth to fifth. So far, they have told him everything looks A-OK on the telemetry.
Remember, they did have a problem last week at Watkins Glen in qualifying, and we have gone to the paddle shifts in these cars this year, so the paddles are basically behind the steering wheel for the driver to utilize, no longer using the shifter on the side of the car like we used for so many years. And the drivers love it, but also it's great for accident situations like we just saw a moment ago. There's no longer the gear shifter or the gear rod going down the side of the cockpit any longer. Nothing to hit the driver's leg when he goes inside the wall.
And let's go back to Watkins Glen International, because obviously this was the moment that everybody remembers late in the race under yellow. Scott said, I just made a bonehead move, and there was poor Ryan Briscoe getting collected in that one as well. Tony Kanaan squeezed on through, and Briscoe finished 12th. Dixon finished 11th in that race. Meanwhile here, nothing has changed up front except Helio Castroneves has opened up his lead to 0.6 of a second over Danica Patrick. 7th race this year that Helio has led. It's all been on the ovals.
The fastest car out there right now is Tony Kanaan at 201 miles an hour, 201.7, and 200.1 for the leader, Helio Castroneves.
And as Helio continues to motor here, Jack Arute, what's the latest you're hearing down there?
Sometimes it pays to have a sense of humor, and Tim Cindric and Helio Castroneves can be counted to exhibit that. Just as they got ready to take the green flag, Cindric radioed to his driver, hey Helio, how's the view up front compared to last week? Both of them had a real good laugh over that.
Well, if you remember last week, not one of those performances. He started 26. Remember, he tried to play the role of mechanic in qualifying after the throttle cable broke and didn't do a very good job by his own account. And He ended up fighting his way back to 16th, but that was where he ended up. Right now, he's in control after 23 laps. Helio Castroneves looks for victory #1 tonight. We've got more racing for you tonight and tomorrow. The NHRA is racing in Denver tonight, qualifying at 10 p.m. right when we wrap up over on ESPN2. And then race day tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, and then at 8 p.m. Eastern, it is the Mopar Mile High Nationals final eliminations. And of course, they made the change to Top Fuel and Funny Car. They're racing to the 1,000-foot mark. And I have to admit, it seems strange having a Top Fuel time of 3.92 seconds.
Still very fast.
Very fast.
Any way you look at it.
Yeah, they're still over 300 miles an hour. Take a look at your race leader, Helio Castroneves, as he is closing in on some slower traffic right now. That would be Jamie Kamara. Kamara is in 22nd place. He's a next victim to go a lap down. Of course, for Helio, 6 of his 12 wins in the IndyCar series have come from the pole position, and who knows, maybe 7 is tonight.
And for second place driver right now, Danica Patrick, she needs to get herself up just a little closer, which it looks like she's doing, to maybe take advantage of the traffic in front of Helio Castroneves. Does not seem like her car is as fast as Helio, so if she can take advantage of the traffic, she might have a chance to get around here.
Well, of course, if you were not with us last week at Watkins Glen, there she comes, getting a little closer to him.
Okay, this is telling me something. As soon as Helio starts to get behind dirty traffic, this is the first time he's encountered it in this race, his car is slowing down. You see, he gets close, but he can't get past. We talked about what to watch for in the race. This is the thing a lot of drivers have talked about. I can catch up, but I don't have enough grip to be able to get up and around.
And remember the rain that we had at 3:30 Central Time as Helio goes underneath Kamara and slides on through, puts him a lap down. We have 21 cars now in the lead lap. And there goes Danica as well. Let's take you back to last week in case you weren't with us at Watkins Glen. Early in the knockout qualifying, this was Helio's trouble.
He tried to get out there and fix it himself because the car didn't even make one lap in the qualifying segment. Borrowed some tools from some fans. And Marty, I don't think the mechanics have to worry about their day job. He couldn't even get the engine bonnet off.
Well, he's doing okay in what he's paid to do.
I'm working up to the stand live here. I understand. We're just going to get weather here pretty soon.
You heard from Tim Cindric. That is the way Team Penske and Helio Castroneves are going to race. Flat out, wide open. Banking that the weather will be here in approximately 30 minutes. They are going to try and stretch their fuel mileage because of that fact. Normally, they would pit around lap 50. Guys, we're going to have to watch it carefully. Every pit car down here has got the weather radar, and it's a circle with a lot of red in it.
Yeah, it's not looking real promising. And remember, the magic number here is lap 101. That's when the race becomes official. So this has really turned into a different type of race. It's an all-out sprint.
It really is. It's almost like qualifying laps for all these drivers right now because we're at 200, 201 miles an hour on a pretty consistent basis with the exception of getting up behind traffic. But for certain, Tony Kanaan still has the fastest lap so far. We're on board right now with Ryan Hunter-Reay. In this situation here, I was watching before. He seems like he get up behind the cars in front and just listen to his throttle.
Use the button. If you need fuel, use it.
Take a look up ahead. That is Dan Welding going around the lap traffic. Here comes Ryan Hunter-Reay as well. I believe that's Jamie Kamara in the 34. Yes, it is. Vince, it's been a very emotional week for last week's winner.
Ryan Hunter-Reay got his first win last week at Watkins Glen. It was extra special because he'd found out just beforehand that his mom, Lydia, had been diagnosed with cancer. Before the race, they spoke, and she told him, "Don't worry about me. Go out and get your first IndyCar Series win." Lo and behold, he managed to get that victory. The cell phone went right into his hand afterwards, and he got to talk to Mom. Certainly an emotional win. He said he was so emotional about it, he didn't even know that he could talk about it after he won that race, and he stood in victory lane and never even mentioned it. But she was definitely on his mind and in his heart as he ran on this racetrack here at Nashville. I know she's watching from the hospital in Fort Lauderdale, and everybody along pit road sends their best to Lydia Hunter-Reay.
Certainly do, Lydia. We hope everything turns out well. All right, let's listen in on the radio.
All right, babe. Real smart, strong, and let's go have a good race, huh, babe? Let's bring it home again, just like last week. Yep, copy that.
That was obviously earlier in the race. Bobby Rahal talking to his driver. Of course, that was Rahal's first win as a team owner since 2004 back in Michigan when he had Buddy Rice driving for him. Nothing really changed up front so far. Castroneves' lead, although it's a little closer now. Here comes Dixon trying to make it a little tighter, and Tony Kanaan in fourth. But as you mentioned, with the lack of rubber down on the track and the turbulence, it seems like nobody's able to complete the pass once they get up close enough.
Well, usually in cases like this, with tracks that have more banking, as soon as you come up behind the traffic, you're usually able to find a lane to get yourself by. But because of the concrete surface here, it's a one-lane racetrack, one-lane groove, so you really have to have your timing correct on the traffic up ahead. Now, that being said, you can't just take your foot off the gas and sort of time it coming out of the turn, because obviously as Danica Patrick goes to make a move, and if Helio Castroneves doesn't hear from the officials on that one, I'm not sure what that one's going to be about. Remember we talked about segment consistency? Right now it looks like Helio's car is starting to go off just a little bit as the run gets longer.
Well, we'll wait to see if he gets a warning from race officials, but Danica won't be happy with Helio the way Scott Dixon wasn't happy with Danica.
That was not even just a little bit. That was like moving over for a bus stop. Jack.
Guys, one of the things that's happening with the decision by all these teams to go and push as far as lap 6-0, the tires do begin to fall off. They knew about it going in, and that's why the projected pit window is going to be around lap 50. But the dark clouds that are surrounding the backside of the grandstands here, it made people try to push the envelope a little further.
And we have been told by race control that he has been warned. And look at Danica trying to go underneath, and he slams the door on her.
Takes the air off the front wing. Now she does not get passed by Dixon. That will be a surprise. Yep, the momentum's lost because he closed the door on her, and there goes Dixon.
So Scott goes around, and what's going on with Danica, Vince?
Well, even though she gave up that position to Scott Dixon, and now Tony Kanaan, her teammate, is going to get by her. That's because she lost all the momentum going for that move in the pass on Helio Castroneves. But just the fact that she was able to put her nose in there is an indicator of how well her car is handling. Danica was very confident when she spoke to me before the race today about her race car and the way she feels comfortable in this car at this racetrack. And there aren't many drivers, Scott, that I talked to this weekend that had any sort of comfort level along those lines.
Well, especially Vince, all these drivers that came up from Champ Car.
These guys for about 2 to 1. Okay. Long race, really long race here.
That's Kyle Moyer, and obviously Danica's probably complained about what went on up front, and he's just trying to settle her back down, saying it's a long race, don't worry about that. But track position is so important here, especially when you're running with the leaders. Tough to get positions back. Now, a lot of racing left to go, a lot of traffic left to go. Maybe that situation might happen to the drivers up front, and she'll get a chance to take advantage of it possibly.
Meanwhile, the battle for fifth continues. Hideki Muto trying to hold off Dan Weldon. Now we are getting close to our first round of pit stops. There's your top 5 here at the Firestone IndyCar 200. It could be the IndyCar 101 with the rain on the way. All right, the race up front continues to be Helio Castroneves over Dixon, Kanaan, and Danica Patrick. Time for our GoDaddy.com trivia question for this week. And which Nashville winner went on to win the IndyCar Series Championship? And the year, I know you were peaking, Mr. Goodyear. I almost called you Dixon again like I did yesterday on the qualifying show. And it's not Scott Dixon. The answer is Tony Kanaan back in 2004. For more, log on to ESPN.com/GoDaddy.
Now, you wouldn't let me answer. I even raised my hand just like a good student in school.
You cheated. You saw the answer already. So you're on board with that 2004 winner. And he is trying to track down Scott Dixon right in front of him. And here's Dixon going for the lead. And down into the turn, and he makes it. So the points leader, Scott Dixon, has got the lead. And here comes TK, and Kanaan goes underneath. So Helio goes from first to third, and here comes Danica. His tires must be shot.
No, just lost momentum. Boy, that must have been a situation where he knew it was going to happen for many laps coming along the front stretch. And now it gets very busy on the front stretch itself. He knew.
Whoa! 3 wide. That was Hideki Muto in that sandwich. Vitor Mira out there as well. Ryan Hunter-Reay in the 17 right behind the 3 of Helio. The 20, the bright yellow of Ed Carpenter trying to get in that mix as well. Muto drops a couple of positions. He's back to 8th now. And boy, Mira is looking good as well. Remember, Mira started 15th. Here's a Graham Rahal. He's in this mess as well. There's Muto having more people going by. And boy,
Well, you get
Hideki
that
is really
high side. You cannot make it work right now. There's no rubber up there.
And we're seeing our first pit stop at lap 57. Danica Patrick comes into pit lane. So she breaks off from her top 5 position. And meanwhile, here comes Dixon continuing around. Vince?
As Danica Patrick makes her way down pit lane, 60-mile-an-hour speed limit. Dave Sharpley on the outside front tire. He's the crew chief. He'll also make a front wing adjustment to try to give Danica a little more grip. There's the adjustment. Away she goes clearly. Danica Patrick, 7.5.
And no problem exiting pit lane this week, unlike last week. If you remember, she took a hard right, almost collected a couple of guys from Target Ganassi Racing. She went down immediately after and apologized. The guys accepted. And Vitor Mira has come in as well. He had gotten up into the top 7. Dan Weldon is now coming into pit lane as well. And as Scott Dixon continues to get great fuel mileage, we'll send it to Jack Arute.
Watch for a wing adjustment on Dan Weldon. He's been complaining of the car being a tad pushy, a little understeer. He will be the first of the Target Chip Ganassi specials to put. The team goes to work. We look, and yes, there is a half turn going down on the wing for Dan Weldon. Meanwhile, what about Scott Dixon? Expect him to pit in 1 to 2 laps.
Ryan Hunter-Reay, you saw there on the right side of your screen, has also made his first pit stop. And meanwhile, Scott Dixon continues to roll on. Tony Kanaan has now finally blinked. He drops in from 2nd place. So the man in the points lead is also getting the best fuel mileage so far tonight. Vince, we're sending it your way.
Tony Kanaan has complained a little bit of some understeer, but most importantly, it's been grip all the way around. So they're going to make a tire pressure adjustment on the 711 car of Tony Kanaan with the intent of just making that car stick a little bit better. Jack Arute.
Meanwhile, Scott Dixon is getting ready to be serviced as he comes down the pit road. Helio Castroneves has completed his work. He is pulling out, and you can see the blue dot. It's 60 miles an hour being called in for his service, carrying the blue and black livery, trying to hit his marks exactly. He does. They will make no changes other than 4 Firestone Firehawk tires and 22 gallons of ethanol. It's done in 7.6 seconds, guys.
And lap 63. Now remember, 8 of those laps were under caution, but still very good fuel economy as you're on board with Danica Patrick right now. She is shown in 6th place. Who's the leader? Well, you have to find the Oriole Serbia car, number 5. There he is. He last pitted. Well, it's been 57 laps. He came in during that first stretch of pit stops. Enrique Bernoldi looks like he may be out of fuel, so he pulls down, and he was in 2nd place, so he may have run it dry. It's been 56 laps since his last pit stop. So when Serbia finally blinks and has to come in for another load of ethanol, Dixon will retake the lead. But the question is, how many more laps can Serbia go? Vince, you've got more on Oriole?
Remember, Oriole Serbia came in on lap 6 and just took a splash on that initial yellow when Ryan Briscoe and Marco Andretti got together. So they took advantage since they were starting toward the back anyway. But Serbia started 17th. So they knew they would only lose a couple of spots if they came in under that yellow and took on that splash of fuel. So that's why they can go a little extra under these conditions, Marty.
And remember, he's got 2 good finishes on the ovals, a 5th at Richmond and a 6th at Milwaukee. And that Milwaukee race, if you remember, he was down a lap. And on that mile track, that's a heck of a run. So right now he continues to be the race leader by 12.5 seconds over Scott Dixon. Tony Kanaan, Danica Patrick, and Dan Weldon round out your top 5.
Even though this is noted as the Superspeedway, 1.33 miles in length, so we see 2nd place on the track right now with Scott Dixon and then Tony Kanaan running in 3rd. Danica Patrick's not far behind in 4th, but a 1.33 mile concrete race surface. Yes, it's known as a super speedway, but realistically, this track drives like a much shorter track because of the bumpiness of it, lack of grip, and some of the drivers say it's almost like segments of Richmond, places like that, where you got to really get down the corners and really make the car work.
And on the right side, there is your race leader, Oriole Serbia, as he now, after 61 laps, is coming in to pit lane. So we send it to Vince Welch.
Well, as Oriol Servia comes onto pit lane, they spin an umbrella. That's Fiona Hewitson, who's one of the PR folks for KV Technology Racing. And they spin that umbrella so Servia can see his pit box a little easier. He has had an oval experience of 35 races, so he believes he should be better on the ovals than what he's put up in results this season. But he thinks maybe tonight is the night, since they took that early fuel, that they could make something happen. A longer stop as you see the time as they filled it all the way to the end.
Yeah, what happened there? 18 seconds as you see the traffic being lapped by now the race leader. Vince, what was the problem?
They had a hose, an air gun stick on their tire, changing the front tire, Marty, on the outside right, I believe, and they're now looking at that gun. So definitely an issue, as you noted, with an 18-second stop. That's costly.
Yeah, it drops him back to 15th. In fact, he has now lost a lap according to scoring. We'll double check on that to make sure. But right now, we're on lap 71 of 200. The rain is approaching. Dixon is back in the lead after the first round of pit stops. Tony Kanaan is second. Danica Patrick third. Dan Weldon fourth. Vitor Meira has moved from 15th to 5th. We'll talk more about him. Back here at the Nashville Superspeedway, let's talk about our next race. It takes us back on a road course. Be sure to join us on ABC next Sunday for the Honda IndyCar Grand Prix at Mid-Ohio. That's next Sunday, 1:30 on ABC. You can see the clouds getting awfully dark off into the west, and there is a line of thunderstorms heading our way. It looks clear over to the right, but then you look behind the grandstands, and it is not looking good. Right now, the race lead is held by Scott Dixon over Tony Kanaan by 0.2 of a second, Jack Arute, and everybody's talking rain.
Yeah, in fact, you would think if you look at Scott Dixon's pits and you take a look at the radar, the rain is directly about to go upon us. Up there, Mike Hull is able to see a circle filled with purples, magentas, and yellows. That's severe rain. So you would think that your leader would be running at full rich, would you not? Well, guess what? Not only is he not running at full rich, he's conserving fuel. They are not convinced that this race is going to end early. Let's check in with Vince Welch.
Well, and Jack, while keeping an eye on the weather, George Klotz is encouraging his driver, Tony Kanaan, don't lose Dixon. Weather is coming. You've got to stay on him. So if there's ever going to be an opportunity to make your move, this might have to be that opportunity, Jack, as Scott Dixon approaches some traffic. And Bria Pedigo, others dealing with that situation as well.
That's right, Vince. Vitor Meira currently in 4th position, but remember, he started back in 15th. The Panther car is feeling good on that last pit stop around lap 60. The crew gave him a turn of front wing, made a slight tire pressure adjustment to give Vitor some more grip. Now that he has it, he's on the move, and if the weather can hold off, this team's going for it.
You know, and this is maybe one of those heartbreak situations because this car really does have the capability, the way it's running right now, Scott, to pull off a win.
It'd be nice to see him obviously finishing second so many times, but his lap speeds are going pretty well right now, 201 miles an hour, so he's up there as far as the fastest laps are concerned, and he seems to be right there in the segment of about a mile an hour faster on the current race pace than the people are up front. But what I've noticed also is drivers in turns 1 and 2 have a different handling car than they do in 3 and 4. And for instance, right now Scott Dixon does not have a very good car down there in turns 1 and 2, but he certainly has a good car down 3 and 4. Now watch this, going into 1, Tony Kanaan certainly seems to catch him through the tri-oval section, carries more speed into 1 and 2, and Dixon seems to get a good run going down here through 3 and 4. So that's something that TK is going to have to observe, watch. He now knows his weak spot. Seems like the middle of the turn is where Dixon is not very fast. The car is not rotating well enough for mid-turn, so it means he's got to get off the gas. He does not have the speed right now and the ability to even get past Will Power, who's a car that's directly in front of him that he's trying to put down a lap.
Well, let's go back to Vitor Meira for another moment. Remember the heartbreak that he had last week at Watkins Glen, as he has gone 86 races without a win, the longest in the series. Down into turn number 8, that's EJ Vizo, the man with the mumps. In that case, it was the man with the bumps, and the bumps put Vitor out of the race, and he was not too pleased afterwards, and he let him know it. And we haven't had a chance to get EJ's side on this thing because, as we mentioned, he is quarantined along with the whole team. Right now, that's Danica Patrick right in front of Mr. Vitor Meira, as Meira is closing in on her slowly but surely. The race has sort of stabilized. Dixon is in front of Kanaan by 1.2 seconds. It's about the same distance all the way through the top 5 here at Nashville. Don't forget, Monday night, ESPN brings you the State Farm Home Run Derby. Some of the biggest bats in the game take their swing at the ultimate long ball competition, the State Farm Home Run Derby, live from Yankee Stadium for the first time and the last time. It's Monday at 8 Eastern on ESPN. Well, the great thing about side-by-side is you did not miss the pass. Tony Kanaan now has taken a 1.2-second lead over Scott Dixon as we are approaching halfway. Let's go back and show you one more time.
We always talk about the traffic up front, and can the car really handle well when it's following the car behind? We think that Scott Dixon sort of lost a little bit of grip, lost momentum in the middle of turn, enough for Tony Kanaan to take advantage of that and slide by catching the draft. Mario Moraes, which is on the low side, going through turns 1 and 2, just gave enough disturbed air to the number 9 of Scott Dixon. And Tony Kanaan makes it by, Marty.
All right, let's go back a little bit earlier, because this is something that not even we had seen, but the camera guys caught it, as Tony Kanaan was motoring around the track and came upon Will Power. And we're waiting for it. There it comes. There they are right there, side by side. Whoa, that got awfully close. And this is from the onboard.
Scott Dixon has already made the move past. Remember, Dixon was behind Will Power for quite a fair amount of time. And Will Power thought, I'll just sort of go down on the apron here, towards the apron through the D section of the front stretch, but unfortunately there was a car there taking up his place for him. That was Tony Kanaan.
Tony Kanaan puts Graham Rahal a lap down. Rahal is running in 11th, so that means we have 10 cars on the lead lap. And oh, we have caution on the racetrack. Ryan Hunter-Reay has hit the wall. So our winner last week is into the wall coming out of turn number 4, and we are right approaching the halfway mark. We're working lap 100. This is our second caution here at Nashville tonight. And I have no idea what happened to Ryan in this one. We just saw the end result. There goes Tony Kanaan getting around as he is all the way down to turn number 1. And boy, the joy of last week for Bobby Rahal has just been erased. If you remember last year, Jeff Simmons was involved in a crash in lap 188. It ended up being his last race in that car. Ryan Hunter-Reay came on board the following week at Mid-Ohio and has been there ever since.
He's done a very good job for the team. The engineers enjoy working with him. They have a good rapport, a good understanding with what he wants out of the race car. Now we're going to watch a replay here. It's the car that's on the back side of Will Power, just on the high side. His right side wheels outside of the groove, up onto the gray area. You see he's already there. Couldn't get the pass done, trying to carry momentum through the turn so he can pass Will Power going down the straightaway. The timing was off just a little bit. Just coming down, and this is a situation where you almost have to release and get out of it because you're not going to be able to make the pass. Now, Will Power, I think, wasn't having a great day also because he was off the gas and off of speed quite a fair amount. Ryan tries to get back on the throttle, but he knows he's lost the front end, and then you're just a passenger on the way up towards the wall.
Let's check in with Vince.
Well, Scott Rimke shaking his head as he watched that replay. What opinion of that did you have, Scott?
Oh, I don't have one yet. It's kind of hard to tell on that, but obviously we ran up on Will for some reason, and once you get in that high lane, it doesn't forgive you.
I know it's a week-to-week season, and you're a hero one week and a zero the next, but maybe just in perspective, what that win last week at Watkins Glen meant for this Rahal Letterman ethanol team.
Well, it means a lot. Obviously, it's been a long time coming, and we've been running well and running pretty well tonight, and hope to back it for ethanol, but you know, we'll put it together and go home to Mid-Ohio next week.
Thanks, Scott. Jack?
Vince, they're about to pit. You can see it looks like feeding time at the zoo. You can't go any further despite the inclement weather, the threatening weather. Danica Patrick pulls into her pit. Scott Dixon, Helio Castroneves do as well. As we watch Tony Kanaan. Kanaan blew by Scott Dixon. So Dixon's going to make a major wing adjustment in his car. Danica Patrick in 6.7 seconds. All three of them in the 6.7 second stop. They go back out to do battle again. The only chassis change I saw, though, was on Scott Dixon, guys.
All right, so the race off pit road as everybody holds station. The top four. Castroneves picks up one. Weldon drops one. Let's check in with Vince Welch.
Tony Kanaan did come in for the regular service, ethanol fuel and Firestone Firehawk tires. Getting back out and understanding that weather might be approaching, they want to be in the spot in which they are at the top of the leaderboard.
And as you see, Oriol Servia, he is a one lap down right now in 11th position. So even though he's ahead of Tony Kanaan, he is not the race leader. Stay with us. You're looking at the race leader, and this race is now official as we are working lap number 105 of 200. That is Tony Kanaan. Scott Dixon is second, Danica Patrick third, and Vitor Meira is in fourth, ahead of Helio Castroneves in fifth. Take a look at our Firestone lap leaders. And you'll see that Helio has led the most, 54 to Dixon's 30. Tony's led 15 and counting, and Oriol Servia, who is in front of Tony, but he'll get the wave around to get back on the tail end of the lead lap. Take a look at Vitor Meira. He started 15th, has moved up to 4th. This is one guy that's hoping that the rain stays away. And we talk about so much the importance of spotters are, especially on these high-speed ovals, as we take our cameras upstairs, high above even our position. There's the row of spotters, and Vitor's spotter is one Pancho Carter. Yeah, the former IndyCar driver, and gives us a chance to talk about who's your spotter. There he is.
Well, when I first met Vitor, I don't know, well, he probably remembers because he was just some little snotty-nosed kid. I thought from Brazil that was going to come drive an IndyCar because we were doing a reward-type deal for the USAC champions down in Texas. Oh, you forgot that, didn't you?
Oh, man, I had so much going on.
You were just a little... I said, this kid from Brazil, I mean, what's he doing here? And he was the only one that left the pits without killing the motor and went out and ran as fast as anybody else had done that day. So I thought, well, this might be okay someday.
Great story, and over his shoulder, Pancho Carter's looking because he saw some lightning back there, and it is definitely on the way as we are some very dark clouds off to the left. Keep your fingers crossed, folks. We'll try and stay high and dry.
Halfway mark of this 200 lap affair. Ride around more if you dare. Gonna take the checkered flag. You got the fastest car, yeah. Gonna lead Music City with the badass guitar.
And our thanks to Stacy Mitchard. He's based here in Nashville, blues guitarist, won numerous awards. Blues Entertainer of the Year from the Music City Blues Society. Let's catch up with Ryan Hunter-Reay, Brienne.
Marty, a disappointing finish for Ryan Hunter-Reay. Ryan, can you tell us what went wrong?
I don't know. I don't know what Will was doing. He was off the pace 20 laps before that, and then all of a sudden got up right in front of Helio and I and started getting back on it, so we settled into a rhythm. All of a sudden he came down the back straight and just parked it going into turn 3 and 4, and I had two choices. Get on the brakes, risk turning the rear end around, or see if there was anything on the high side. Of course, at Nashville, there's not. So I was doing my best not to get in the high line anywhere, but I was just forced into it there. So I just feel bad for the guys. We go from a high at Watkins Glen to a low like this. It's just so unfortunate. So we'll regroup, go to Mid-Ohio. I can't wait to get back there.
He said it best, guys. The highs and lows are incredible in this series.
And as you finish up, Brienne, we're getting ready to go back to green flag racing. It is Tony Kanaan in front of Dixon, Patrick, Meira, and Castroneves. Oh, and Meira's got a sight on Danica for third. He started to take a look to the outside and thought better of it, going on board with him. now that everybody's up to speed, he can't pull back up.
Hear him downshift in the middle of the turn. You do not see his hands come off the wheel. As we mentioned, now paddle shifters, just takes his 4 fingers on the left-hand side and pulls the trigger back, goes down a gear. You can see he's also got a little bit of understeer. He gets off the throttle right in the middle of the turn where the G-forces are over 4.2, 4.3 Gs. Let's listen here. And you see the lights go off on the steering wheel as a Firestone telemetry gives us all that information. Now watch the throttle, the green bar graph, 100% right now. Let's see where he goes in turns 1 and 2. That's a fair amount off right there.
And it ends up showing on the speed about 197 compared to the race leader Tony Kanaan at 199 miles an hour on that last lap. Let's move a little bit further forward in the field. Check in on Scott Dixon. The lead is 0.7 of a second as Dixon's trying to cut into that margin, Jackaroot.
One of the key weapons that Scott Dixon always has at his disposal is the chief tactician for this team. Mike Hull is part Dr. Phil whenever he talks to his driver.
You know, Tony's got a really good car. You've got a really good car. Danica's fast. She just has kind of a tough time figuring out where to place it, but her car's pretty good, Scott. I would say that you three have the best cars. Mira shows speed behind you, actually, because he kind of moved his way through 3 or 4 guys there toward the end of that run.
Copy that.
But it's a lot like we talked about with you and TK after yesterday's running.
Well, you got to think that they like their chances, especially if you're on the superstitious side. Every time they've run that blue Energizer color, they've won the race in that 9 car, and right now they're in 2nd place. And what a great conversation that Mike had with his driver. Vince, you've got more?
Well, it's interesting. I was talking with Scott Dixon yesterday about Tony Kanaan and why Kanaan was such a challenger for the championship. And he told me, he said, you can always be assured that midway through the race, you'll be dealing with Tony Kanaan. He always seems to pull it together regardless of how his car might be. You know, if you're going to win a race, more often than not, you're going to have to beat Tony Kanaan. And isn't it interesting? The guy he's chasing tonight is Tony Kanaan.
Well, and here's one stat that is not in Kanaan's favor. Only once in 7 prior races here at Nashville has the leader at halfway gone on to win the race. And the one guy who did it, Scott Dixon, last year. Everybody else failed 6 other times.
Interesting, we heard that Tony Kanaan had a short fill during that last pit stop. That means they didn't put in the complete 22 gallons of ethanol fuel. So he does have a little bit of a lighter car right now. Maybe that's helping him pull away from Dixon if Dixon indeed did put on a full load, Marty, which we're not clear on at this point.
And let's take a look at the last 6 races last year, because Tony Kanaan really had a strong performance down the stretch. Vince?
Well, Tony Kanaan put 15 gallons of fuel in during that stop, and I asked George Klotz, I said, was that a short fill? And he said, no, we filled it to the top. It's what we had left over, but we put 15 gallons more in. We're good. We've got as much as anybody else out there. Maybe a little gamesmanship, maybe not, but that's what George said. Jack?
Meanwhile, for Scott Dixon, I'm pleased to report he also filled the tank. You could see it come out the overflow. I also checked with Elio Castroneves. He too had filled the tank. But what I find interesting, guys, is each of the stops was what, 6.7 seconds? So it had to be everybody about 13 gallons.
Well, everybody playing the game.
We don't think we're going to get to the end of this fuel run. We're halfway through the race. That's because of the weather.
So there was the conversation live at the time going on with 79 laps to go. As we mentioned, everybody is focused on the rain that is approaching. I know we keep talking about it, and we look up at the radar screen, and it is ugly to the west. The question is not if, but when. And can we get this in? And does Tony Kanaan become the 2nd 2-time winner at Nashville? Stay with us to find out. Just a reminder, as you look on board with our race leader, Tony Kanaan, our next race takes us back on the road course. Be sure to join us on ABC next Sunday for the Honda IndyCar Grand Prix at Mid-Ohio, Sunday at 1:30 Eastern on ABC. That man right in front of him is Oriol Servia. Servia running in 10th. There are only 10 cars on the lead lap. Let's get you caught up to speed and start off with Vince Welch.
Well, Marty, Tony Kanaan leading this race today. And Kanan told me before the race began tonight, we've got to win races if we're going to win the championship. Win races and hope for some misfortune for those in front of you. Kanan certainly doing his part today. He has led, as you see, 38 of the 127 laps. We're past the halfway point. If we get weather that ends the night, he'd be the winner, Jack.
Vince, a year ago, the guy that's running in second was trailing Dario Franchitti in the points chase by a little under 50 points. Today, Scott Dixon leads the points chase by a little under 50 points. He's been battling an ill-handling rear end on the Energizer number 9. They've made several changes, but so far, he still remains mired in second place. Vincey?
Well, Jack, in third place is Danica Patrick. She certainly had her issues last week at Watkins Glen, but she has been rock solid here tonight. Danica, currently running in third, said she benefited greatly from Tony Kanan's test here a couple of weeks ago. She felt like she had a car capable of winning. She's not only been a driver tonight, she's also been a weather person.
Yeah, we saw it. I'll tell you if there's any moisture coming down, just keep hitting your marks. Doing a great job.
So Danica keeping an eye on the sky, as we all are tonight at this point, Danica, or Brianne.
Right behind Danica Patrick is Vitor Mira, currently in fourth position. When the leaders came in on that last stop, Vitor did as well, took tires, filled back up with fuel. He has been told to go to full rich on the fuel settings and to go after Danica. Jack?
Helio Castroneves started this race on the pole, led a few laps, and then all of a sudden had to back out of the throttle, and he has not been able to get that momentum back. Tim Cindric and he have worked very hard. They have watched the skies as well. But right now, Brianne Petticoat, he's just cruising, as they would say.
Ed Carpenter is currently in sixth position. He started in the 8th spot. Ed says his car, it's not bad, but it's not good enough for him to be aggressive. He's been battling some understeer the entire race. They did make some slight changes, a little tire pressure and a few adjustments to try to battle that, and he's still on the move. Jack?
Dan Weldon has had a very challenging weekend here at Nashville. When they unloaded off the trailer, the car was so bad, Weldon wanted to park it. They made major adjustments during qualifications. The car got better. Every stop tonight, they have done likewise, but he is playing catch-up. Vince?
Well, and then there's Darren Manning. Manning was 9th here a year ago and hoped for a better showing here this weekend, but they were at the bottom of the speed chart almost all weekend. But Manning says the key here at Nashville, get to the last pit stop, be on the lead lap, and then go racing. So far, mission accomplished as he races for A.J. Foyt, who had cataract surgery on Wednesday. It's an interesting relationship, but one Manning enjoys.
I wind AJ up and he winds me up about, he can't understand a word I'm saying, and I tend to ignore him all the time. No, not really. You know, it's good fun. You know, we make fun of each other about how we talk and things, and I try to teach him, you know, how to pronounce all his letters in his alphabet and everything. But he takes totally no notice of me, you know, and slaps me around the side of the head and tells me to talk properly, you know. So it's good fun. It's always good fun.
And always good to see AJ at the racetrack, certainly after some health issues. Good to see AJ and Darren Manning having a good night as well, building on that momentum of a good second place run at Watkins Glen last week, Brianne.
Right behind Darren Manning is Buddy Rice. He started 12th. He's moved up to the 9th spot. And like you said with Darren Manning, Buddy Rice is also trying to build on momentum. He got his first top 5 finish of the season last week in Watkins Glen. They're hoping to carry that forward into the race. He's a bit frustrated with passing right now, guys, but he's still on the move. Guys?
And he is the last car on the lead lap, a good up-to-speed group, as we've got yellow on the racetrack. And we have moisture reported on the racetrack. And the yellow flag has come out, our third here tonight. Jackaroot?
Fellas, it first started raining up on the starter stand about 45 seconds ago. Now all of a sudden that precipitation is starting to reach pit road as well. The black clouds are starting to open up, fellas.
The rain you can see in the lights starting to fall, and look at the folks in the grandstands as they are ducking for cover as well. We told you it was not a matter of if but when. We fell 61 laps shy of making our goal, although the race is official. We'll wait to see if we get any respite, but pits will remain closed. because of the fact that it is rain that's causing this caution, and they'll wait to see if it will slow down at all. Let's talk a little bit about potential strategy here. Obviously, there's not much you can do at this point, but if we do get stopped for a while and then we go back to green flag racing, who do you like?
Well, Tony Kanaan does look strong right now. It seems like he's able to get through traffic. Scott Dixon, I think, has some issues trying to get past cars that are up in front of him, the lap cars. Danica Patrick, maybe not so much, but overall, I think quite a few of the cars that are running up front are very strong. And the restarts, we always know, are great times to pass people when you can take advantage of it and time it correctly. But one of the best guys at the restarts, Marty, is Tony Kanaan. I don't see anybody really taking advantage of getting past him on the restart.
Well, one of the things we want to go back and show you is, let's update you on the fact that Vitor Meira has moved up to 3rd, Castroneves to 4th, and Danica dropped to 5th right before the yellow came out. Let's go back and see as we go on board Danica's car to see exactly what happened.
Traffic down below. The 0-2 of Justin Wilson. She's way up in the gray, and she collects it. What a save. Unfortunately, loses momentum.
And there goes the two guys, Meira and Elio.
Now, if this track rains and this race is called, she'll be thinking about that one all week, all the way down through the next race at Mid-Ohio.
Well, she's already picked up 2 spots in the points. She started the evening 7th. Right now, if the race does end, she'd move back into the top 5, Vince Welch.
Yeah, Danica Patrick came on her radio and was lamenting the fact that trying to make something positive happen ended up biting her in the backside. So, Scott, you're exactly right. If this race does end where it is, and those are a couple of positions lost, she'll be a bit frustrated, and understandably so, over those 2 spots later this week. That won't go away easy, will it?
Well, and we should correct ourselves, because I've just noticed race control moved Castroneves back behind Danica. So obviously he got around her after the yellow had come out, according to race control. So she's actually only dropped the 1 spot now to Meira, who is having a spectacular night. And I don't care how late we stay here. If we had a shot to watch Meira come from 15th to win his first race, I want to stick around for that tonight.
I absolutely agree. And Brienne, you have John Barnes there?
That's right, Scott. John Barnes, you call the shots for Vitor Meira. Your driver's currently in 3rd position. When the rain started coming down, there was a little celebration in this pit. If it stops, if the race is over, are you satisfied?
No, we want to win. You know, would I like to run another 60 laps? You know, I think Vitor's done a great job, and the team is. You know, we gain position every time in the pits, and you know, so we came here to win.
What kind of confidence boost is a solid run like this for this team?
Well, I mean, we've run really good all year. You know, it's just we've had circumstances, people run into us or something happen. You know, but you know, it's really good to be back in front.
Back to you guys.
Let's check in with Vince Welch.
Well, Marty, right now, George Close speaking with one of the track officials. They're talking about the dampness on the track. It's a sprinkle, a little heavier sprinkle than it was a minute or so ago, but by no means a drizzle at this point. But they are talking about how wet the track is. And remember, last week, you know, you talk about incidents on the track, which you don't expect. Last week, Scott Dixon spun on a track that was completely dry. George, are you having communication with TK at all about how cautious you must be with a little bit of dampness on the track, especially after what happened to the 9 car last week?
Yeah, you know, he knows to be careful, and like you say, we just want to see what this rain does, and we're right where we want to be for sure. So we'll just see what happens here.
What was the conversation with the track official we just saw there?
Well, we just tell him to sweep the marbles up like we do every year. Just every time there's a yellow, those marbles get really bad. He says why they're at, they may as well just take care of the marbles too.
And every team along this way has radar that they're keeping an eye on. What's your expectation as far as the rest of this race is concerned? Go back to green, or do you think we're going to get wet?
God, I can't be a weatherman. Every time I try to be, it bites me in the butt. So we'll see what happens here. I just like where we're at, and we're in our window for one more stop, so we'll just see what happens here.
Everybody playing the guessing game, Jack.
Vince, before the race started, I asked this man if he thought this race, or if he changed his thinking that the race may only go to the halfway mark. And Michael, you told me no. You were going to prepare this as if it was going to go the full 200 laps. What about now?
Well, we would have looked like a timing stand full of zeros if we would have stayed out a few laps ago. So we're glad that we made the decision to come in. And you have to race the race like it's going to be a 200 lap race, no matter what. But Scott in the target car and Tony in his car are certainly the 2 of the fastest people on the racetrack. You know, they race each other clean. and they both enjoy racing with each other. So we hope that we get to go back to green.
Mike, it looks like when Scott gets up in traffic, especially when he gets close to other cars, maybe the stability starts to go away a little bit. What is he reporting on the radio?
I think he's just wanting to finish first or second tonight. We've seen what happens to people that get a little over anxious on a racetrack like this racetrack. If we can seize an opportunity to pass and win, that's exactly what we'll do.
Scott, Marty, I like it when a guy doesn't answer the question.
I always say that's about as avoidance as you could get, really. So if there is something there, he's certainly probably not going to report it, Jack, because as you know, the rest of the teams are generally having someone listen to the telecast just to sort of get some inside information about other cars. So I still go with what I say. I think that his car maybe isn't as strong in traffic situations.
Well, let me
as
let you in on a
others.
secret. I can't name the crew member because he might get fired, but did confirm what you suspected, Scott, that they may be at a little bit of a disadvantage to Tony Kanaan when it comes to the downforce setup. So you were right.
Well, in that situation here, then again, what Mike Hall just told you is the reaction to the problem they have, which he didn't answer, and that's just to make sure you can finish tonight for points. So smart move by the team, and that's why they're up there winning the championship so far.
All right, well, we're talking Scott Dixon, and of course, he has won 2 years in a row here, and let's take you back and show you those moments. In fact, in '06, it was the closest finish ever, as that was Dan Weldon, his teammate, right on the back door. That was his first of 2 Gibson guitars. The last one, and again, in that Energizer blue, as he took the checkers. He's looking for 3 in a row at Nashville. Well, the pits have opened, and Tony Kanaan takes from the race lead and comes into pit lane. 6.4 seconds later, he is back out. Now, we can tell you Scott Dixon stayed out. Now, it has been 46 laps since he and his teammate Dan Weldon pitted. And there's Helio Castroneves, Bruno Junqueira, Danica Patrick, she also pits, Ed Carpenter. But there are the 2 Target Ganassi cars as they stay out on the racetrack. They are listed first and second. And let's talk a little strategy. What's going on in this camp, Jack?
Well, guys, from my perspective, they laid out. Both teams for Target Chip Ganassi were laid out, ready to go. You know, in poker, that's like raising. They had no intentions of pitting, at least that time around. So they snookered everybody, Vince.
Well, Jack, the reason the 7-Eleven car of Tony Kanaan came, George Clote said, I can't play the weather game. We can go to the end. If we have to go to the end, we can go to the end, meaning that the other car that stayed out could not. So, well, I tell you what, a lot of weathermen down here on pit lane, Marty.
Well, and the rain has stopped. In fact, we could be going back to green flag racing here very quickly. So right now, let's reset it for you. Dixon is the leader. Weldon is second. Tony Kanaan drops to third. Castroneves is fourth. Danica Patrick listed in fifth. And then Ed Carpenter moves to sixth. Vitor Mira now is in 7th position. So not a great pit stop for that team that time around. Brienne, let's talk a little bit more about the 4 car.
Well, Marty, this right here is the problem for Vitor Mira. This is the left rear wheel nut off the car. It was very difficult getting this left rear wheel nut off the car. That's why it took so long on that stop. Obviously not what the Panther guys wanted, but they're still in it to win it.
Came in third, comes out 7th. This is when you got a focus driver, so what do you do?
Well, right now he has to time this start perfectly so he can get an opportunity to get around those cars in front, because I do not believe that his car is as fast as the cars in front. We saw him strong on the restart before, but then his car seems to go off once he gets about 2 or 3 laps underneath his belt.
You have seen that Danica Patrick has been moved back in front of Helio Castroneves on the race off pit road. No start they're calling now. And so we're going to get the wave off here, and that's the last thing that we need right now with the rain still approaching from the west. You can see a lot of the fans have not come back to their seats yet, but so they'll wave it off and try it one more time. 49 laps.
Rain in here, Packy.
That's Dixon's radio. 49 laps to go is what I was going to say, Scott. In the first 2 cars, it has been 49 laps since they last pitted. They cannot go the distance by a long shot.
As we had in the report as we're coming up to the restart here, they're expecting the weather to come in here very shortly. That's what they're betting on.
Coming out of the corner, and yes, the green flag flies.
Green.
There'll be 48 to go this time by. Looking a little bit further back, that's Tony Kanaan. There's Danica Patrick being passed by Helio Castroneves on the high side. So Castroneves gets a great restart. He's alongside TK, and oh, they almost touch.
Oh, he makes his move going through there, what I like to call the, pardon me, excuse me, coming through. But usually Tony Kanaan is the most aggressive guy in a restart, but he was surprised by his boyfriend that he had back in karting days. Those guys just continue to go racing throughout their careers, and he was surprised by that. They might have some words after that.
Jack?
Marty, before the green came out, Tim Cindric and Helio Castroneves had a little discussion. They said, you know, we can win this if we take some chances. Tim said, Helio, what do you want to do? He says, let's take some big chances. Wow, what a wobble that was.
Yeah, and this goes back to the restart. There was a big jam up. It looked like everybody checked up, and this may have cost a few people, and Helio not being one of them as he took advantage and shoots up to third. Let's go back. Well, it actually was, it started even further back than this, because as they were coming to the cone, that's where it all began, and there's Helio from the outside, and wow, this was close.
Oh, he makes it by through there, and I think they actually touched just when they're close to each other on the high side. Watch, it gets past Danica. Probably surprises Tony Kanaan. Now the spotters will tell him, and Tony wants to go towards the outside of the track and has to dive the car down back towards the inside. The 19 car that they're passing up in front there was Mario Moraes, who's actually down a lap.
So with 45 laps to go, let's reset it for you. It is Dixon in front of Dan Weldon, but both those cars have to pit. Castroneves is third, Kanaan fourth, Danica Patrick fifth, Vitor Mira in sixth, and Buddy Rice in seventh. And there you see Danica. She is 3.6 seconds behind the race leaders. But for all intents and purposes, as long as this stays dry, keep an eye on Castroneves, because the first 2 guys from Ganassi Racing, Jackaroo, have got to stop one more time.
Usually Mike Hull, guys, looks at one monitor that has all of the readouts from the telemetry. Mike Hull is spending a lot more time looking at the monitor with the weather. The weather filled with magenta, red, and oranges, not your traditional green, and it is starting to close in. The gamble has been played. They think that the weather will come before they run out of fuel.
Have they told you, Jack, how many more laps they can go?
No.
Well, why did I not be surprised at that?
A little poker. That was like about as straightforward as you're going to get with that no.
All right. Mike Hull's either going to look like a genius or the proverbial goat in this deal. We're going to go side by side. You won't miss a thing. Can they pull it off? Well, we've got racing continuing here at Nashville. Let's talk about what's coming up on ESPN2 for the NHRA Powerade Series. They're on tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern with qualifying. Then tomorrow it's a race day at 11 a.m. Eastern and finals coverage of the Mopar Mile High Nationals tomorrow night, 8 Eastern on ESPN2. And yellow is out. And we are getting reports that the rain has returned and maybe the gamble has paid off for Mike Hull. So Scott Dixon and Dan Weldon, and we estimate they had maybe about 8 more laps of fuel.
And if it comes to an end right now, then they made the right gamble. If it gets dry and goes back to a restart, then chances are they still won't make it to the end.
And Mike Hull right there may be the man of the night.
That's a fair amount this time.
Jack?
In fact, Packy Wheeler, the spotter that we were introduced to Know Your Spotter a couple of weeks ago, has just told that man, Mike Hull, that it is coming down the heaviest it has throughout the entire race. You had to see when the rain first broke out down here, just moments before that, the entire Energizer crew was doing what I could only call an IndyCar rain dance. And then when their wishes were fulfilled, you can see that radar. But Mike Hull, never missing a beat, cautioned his driver to be very, very careful, because the track, and I quote, is going to get really slippery.
Well, and I'm sure he hasn't forgotten about last week. So as you can see, Scott Dixon right now with this maneuver as he leads Dan Weldon, Elio Castroneves, and Tony Kanaan. As Tony in fourth in front of Danica Patrick. You want to talk about the joy that they were talking, that Jack was mentioning. Let's show you the disappointment in the 7-Eleven camp when the rain came out. There's George Klotz and the rest of the team.
They played a gamble. The target Chip Ganassi looks like it may pay off, but if it went green, it was going to be a great fight between Elio Castroneves and Tony Kanaan. But I think the 7-Eleven team really knows by looking at the radar that this just might be enough to soak it, I guess, as we will say.
Well, and Tony is, you know, going to be okay in the points, although it's not going to shake the top four. In fact, if this holds up, Scott Dixon, of course, will add to his points lead. While we've got this moment, let's go back and show you that restart, because this is oh so important. Especially take a look as they were bunching up right here.
Dixon has not really got on the gas yet, but in the back section you'll see right there the Marlboro Team Penske machine. Elio Castroneves just gets a good run, gets a good draft. He's going to make the high move on Danica Patrick at this point in time, and up ahead is Tony Kanaan. We saw this earlier. We saw it before. We saw how close they got. He keeps his foot on the gas, not worried about the high side on the restart. It makes his move past Tony Kanaan, Mario Moraes. Now watch on the right-hand side here. Watch how fast and listen. Part of the B coming through. Nicely done. Now, that would have been the move for the race, in my estimations, if we had gone the complete distance, because we knew that both Dixon and Weldon would have to pit if we were going to go green and complete this race. And that may have been the move of the race. But right now, if we're going to end up having this yellow situation, that might not be as important as it could be. We'll wait and see.
All right, we have not lost the racetrack. And for anybody new to the sport, we talk about losing the racetrack when it gets so soaking wet that it'll take like an hour and a half to 2 hours to dry. As you can see, it is not raining that hard right now. In fact, I'm looking out. It's a light drizzle. And so race officials keep the pits closed. And we'll stay under this fourth caution with the top five as you see them across the top of your screen. Well, as you saw on side-by-side, the red flag has been displayed, and the pace car brings the field down into pit lane, and you can see the rain now falling much heavier here at Nashville Superspeedway. So with 30 laps remaining, and it'll actually be 29 once they cross the start-finish line in pit lane, and they will bring everybody to a halt. You know what's interesting? Remember when Tony Kanaan was leading? Well, he would have been third in the points, 56 behind Dixon. This will end up being a 25-point swing. We'll talk more about that once they get stopped. There are the Firestone lap leaders, and you can see that Kanaan has led the most by 5 over Elio Castroneves. Right now, Tony Kanaan would remain in 4th position in the points. And you see Scott Dixon with the visor up. And across the top of your screen, let's show you the points as of right now under this red flag condition. So if we do not go back to green flag racing, you can see that Dixon stretches from 48 to 63. Then Weldon is 69 back. Kanaan is 81. Danica jumps 2 spots up to 5th. Marco Andretti with his early exit drops 2 spots to 7th. And that's the only real change, although Ed Carpenter does move into the number 10 spot, bumping Oriol Servia down to 11th. And there you see everybody else in the field. So the crew's not allowed to work on the car, but as you can see, they're keeping the drivers in the cars, at least for the moment. Let's talk a little bit more about red flag rules, Jack Root.
Marty, all the crews were ready to cover these cars with their tarps and leave their drivers in it for just a moment, but they were held up by the Indy Racing League until they could get enough officials here to make absolutely certain that no adjustments were being made. It's an old trick when you come to cover the car. You could make a wing adjustment off the front of the car. Thus far, they've assigned one to each. The rain is really coming down heavy. For Elio Castroneves, he's just been told, let him out. Many of the other drivers are going to come out now. Not wanting to speculate, but this is going to be a long rain. But we should remember that the Firestone Indy Lights race, it took, what, about 30 minutes to dry the track after a very heavy rainfall this afternoon.
Yeah, and they actually got the track dried in 47 minutes, but they also did not have to worry about pit lane because in that race, it's a sprint race. You do not pit, so they didn't focus on pit lane, whereas here they would have to, of course, take that into consideration. You mentioned the Lights race. Let's take you back because it was a history-making day for the Indy Lights series. Anna Beatrice started on the outside of the front row, and Anna, as she is in the 20 car, bolted into the lead and never looked back as she picks up her first career win, the first female ever to win in the Indy Lights series. You can see the entire race Thursday, 2:30 p.m. on ESPN2, and there is Anna celebrating with her Gibson guitar. Jack, I know you're getting soaked out there, buddy, but yeah, you got Elio Castroneves with you.
And the beauty is when you're with the winner of the Dancing with the Stars campaign, you get your very own Team Penske umbrella. Now, Elio, this hose is not trying to imitate an elephant. That's his drink hose. But, Elio, tell me about that pass on the restart. Wow.
Yeah, it's one of those days, you know, my car is really tough right now. I'm loose, I'm pushed, I'm all over the place, and time is everything, you know, I guess.
Let's take a look at it, and you kind of call it for us here. You be the play-by-play guy.
That's right. I was kind of a little angry because I had to let Danica pass, and then I said, I'll go for it. And all of a sudden, the car stays there. I kept going. I kept pushing the throttle. The car keeps sticking out. All of a sudden, I got the draft, the guy in front of me, and I'm like, yeah, get out of the way. I'm coming. And then after that, actually, I had a big, catch. The car I almost lost. But again, that was a big move, and everything.
What are you going to say to TK, though? You kind of scared him a little bit.
Well, in fact, we're flying back together, so I'm sure we're going to be talking about this this pass. But hey, look, I don't know if it's over or not. Obviously, both of us in a good situation right now. We have a full field. I mean, we're ready to go to the end. I don't know. Let's pray for it stop raining, but if not, nothing that I can do about it.
Hey, Vince, the one thing you got to remember is I'm sure if Tony and this guy are going to be flying back together, they better have their trays and their seats and their full in their upright position.
For sure. Let's talk about a couple of issues. First of all, the decision to come in and take fuel, Tony, instead of staying out as Dixon and Weldon did. What was your opinion of that?
I support my team. I think, you know, a lot of people follow us. You can't gamble like that. I guess me and Rain and me. So I said that over the radio. I said, guys, me and Rain, I don't think we like each other very well. So.
Of course, thinking back to Indianapolis and had the lead when the rain stopped and before your teammate Dario Franchitti won it, but that's just part of racing. Now let's go to the next step. And was there contact between you and Elio, or was it just so close that the car reacted?
Yeah, when you see me and Elio, it's always going to be real close. So no, it was no contact, but he was pretty aggressive. But I mean, come on, the rain is coming. We're fighting for position to win this race, so let's not make a big deal about it. But yeah, it was pretty close. I think you guys are going to see it. He had the speed, and you know, he had a pretty good run on me. So unfortunately, we lost that position. But you know what? Neither of us is going to win this race right now, so it doesn't really matter.
Was it too aggressive of a move on his behalf, or would you have made that move too?
Hey, it's Elio and me, so you know what? You can't say that. We're always going to be aggressive.
Tony Kanaan smiling now. Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I can assure you, when he came in got out of the car, he was not smiling. Brianne Pettigo.
Well, Vince, I've caught up with Danica Patrick. Danica, when you have a great race car going like you did, how frustrating is it to have to get out of the car?
Well, you know, I mean, it's always frustrating when you're dealing with a situation like we had with Dixon and Weldon on a gamble that we were only a couple minutes off of having them have to pit. I think they only had like maybe 4 more laps of fuel to go under green, and you know, we needed like 10 laps of yellow before they ran out. But from that perspective, it's tough, but that's a gamble that they took, and it worked out, and we had a good car today. It was just that, you know, once you get offline here, it's trouble, and every time I tried something, I dropped back. At the beginning, I tried to pass Elio, and, you know, he blocked me down low, and which is what everybody's kind of doing, but, you know, he did it quite a few times, and I dropped back because I got checked up, and then I tried to pass lap traffic around 3 and 4, and he was going so slow, and I tried to go high, and there was, you know, the marbles are just so bad that I slid up, and then I got oversteer, and then shoom, shoom. So it was just like, you know, gambling here at this track doesn't really pay off, unfortunately. So, wow, Elio had a good start in the last one, right? That was a good gamble.
We played your weather report earlier in the race. You were the first to report that there was lightning in the area. What are your thoughts?
Oh man, I saw that like 20 laps earlier at least. Am I looking in the wrong spot? But out of 4 on probably lap number, I don't know, 70 or 80, I saw big lightning off of 4, and then much later on after we went back green again, I said, wow. It was about 3 times the lightning, and it was much closer. So I guess, you know, I'm always just trying to keep my guys informed because, you know, I mean, they can't see everything, and, you know, if my input helps ever at any point in my career, it's worth it.
Give us one more weather update. Do you think we're going to go green again, or do you think this is it for the night?
I think that's it.
You heard it, guys. Jack?
Well, that's good news. I'll tell Scott Dixon that Danica Patrick says that's it. She thinks the race is over. I'm sure you thank her for that. But I want to talk to you a little bit about how close your team ran it in terms of fuel consumption. They made the gamble to keep you and your teammate out. How much was left in the tank there?
We've still got plenty of fuel. We've been saving the whole race, so we're not that far on the edge. You know, we definitely had a little bit left, and the Energizer car had been running, you know, well all night. You know, it was actually a bit of a miscommunication that made us stay out. The pit called me to come in, and I couldn't turn the car down quick enough. So it was a bit of luck, actually, that worked that way. And it seems every time we run the Energizer car that it works out that way. So I've just been told if we can, you know, have it rain as long as the Energizer buzzing, you know, as long as the Energizer.
You spit it out there. As long as the Energizer bunny can run, right? It was a nice plug.
We'll be all right by then, wouldn't we? So hopefully that keeps happening. But you know, TK was definitely strong. You know, in traffic. I think we were stronger than him by ourselves, but he, you know, definitely in traffic was a little bit better. We just couldn't get off the corners. The car was a little bit loose. So it was a decent night for us, but, you know, hopefully it just keeps raining.
A year ago, I was alluding to the fact that you were trailing Dario Franchitti and you were the hunter and not the hunted. Now the roles have been reversed. You've kind of intimated over the course of the last couple of races that while you still go for the victory, maybe you don't go with the same aggression that you would if you were running in second place.
Yeah, I think you size things up, and it's definitely you know, competitors that you're racing with. You know, I think you know, if you're racing with TK, with Elio, with Dan, my teammate, you know, people like that, they're you know, their mind's in the same set as yours. Whereas if you're racing you know, other competitors that are going for first wins or, you know, wins to try and get them back into the championship, they're going to be a lot more aggressive. So that's the thing you got to size up, and, you know, hopefully you don't race with them too often. But, you know, we're still going for race wins, man. We've got to try and do that, but we won't be as aggressive.
We've seen this season a lot of restarts waved off. We saw another one this evening. Can you tell me what a driver has to do when you're on the point and you're on that restart button?
Yeah, it's tough because, you know, a lot of the time you're trying to maximize the actual gear that you have that you're restarting with, and you know, I think we're second gear tonight. You know, we're fairly short.
Let's take a look at it.
And you know, it just, you know, I thought I was going pretty fast. The only difference was that, you know, I think coming up to the restart, I was a little bit slower than needed. So, you know, you're just trying to maximize everything, and everybody's gears are different. And, you know, how Brian sees it up top is, you know, the way they call it. So he told me to speed up, and I did.
Still raining.
I know, it's got to keep raining, man. Come on.
Your guys did a rain dance, though, just before the rain came. It must work.
You know, I think they need to be back out there and trying to do it again, man, because we've got to keep it going.
All right, guys.
And you can see they're trying to keep everything dry. The one thing, here we were giving all this credit to Mike Hall, and it turns out to be a mistake. He was supposed to come in. If he would never have told us, Mike Hall would have been the genius of Nashville. Instead, it turns out to be an error that may pay off with big dividends. Well, back here at the Nashville Superspeedway, the rain continues to fall. We've looked at the radar, and it is not pretty at all. I mean, it extends well back about 20, 30 miles to the west of us, where it is solid yellows, reds, blues, and even for a colorblind guy like me, that's not good news. You can see there in the lights, we're waiting for official word from IndyCar officials, how long they are willing to wait, as we have 29 laps to go in this event. A lot of the fans have already departed here in the grandstands. There are some of the diehards that are hoping to see a finish to this race, but as you can see from that shot, most have headed for cover, if not for their cars in the parking lot. And there's a young man, a Scott Dixon fan with his T-shirt on. He wants to see the presentation of the Gibson guitar. And Mom and Dad are saying, I guess we'll have to stick it out for the sun.
Those are dedicated fans when they're sitting there and not much going on. He's looking up going, yeah.
Yeah, that's rain. Sure is. Okay.
Your friends have left, buddy. It's time to take cover.
Yeah, look, see, the smart ones are up there underneath the mezzanine level and staying nice and dry. And there are some that are heading back to the parking lots, and they are calling it a night as the rain, as you can see there from that shot, just how heavy it has gotten in here in the Nashville area. Remember last year, this race was washed out entirely. It was supposed to be held on a Saturday night. We came back the following day and finished the race, started it, finished it. Even had a little slight rain delay in that one as well, but managed to get all 200 laps in as Scott Dixon won his second straight here at the Nashville Superspeedway. And we're just waiting for word from IndyCar officials to see if it will now be 3 in a row. Let's talk a little bit about next week, because we'll be going back to the road courses. That's right, ABC. It's next Sunday for the Honda IndyCar Grand Prix at Mid-Ohio. 1:30 Eastern next Sunday on ABC. For more information, just log on to ESPN.com. And, of course, after that, it's on to Edmonton. And, of course, the season finale at Chicagoland, where NASCAR is running this weekend. And let's talk a little bit about... Whoop! We are just being told the race has now been called by IndyCar officials. So for Scott Dixon, there he is, his 4th win this year, 3rd in a row at Nashville. No one's ever done that. His 14th career win. And there is the checkered flag. And Jack, I think I'm going to send it to you, because are you going to get to do the honors and give the Gibson?
Yeah, the Gibson is on its way, being run through the rain. And this is Targa Chip Ganassi's 100th victory in IndyCar competition. And you know, you want to strum a tune for us here, Scott, because you're kind of getting used to this. You've got a collection of these now.
This is 3, man. I'm pretty impressed, but, you know, I got to thank the team. I got to thank Energizer, everybody this weekend. You know, we didn't qualify as well as we needed to, but as I said earlier in the season, I think it's just one of those seasons where the luck is going our way. And, you know, tonight I don't think we had the best car, definitely not in traffic. You know, I feel bad for TK, because he was definitely a tough competitor and a guy that raced his way to the front. So happy for the team, happy for everybody tonight. It's definitely a big shot for us in the championship.
I got to tell you, when we watched your team and your teammate laid out their tires, looked like you guys were going to come in, and I gave credit to Mike Hall of playing liar's poker and dealing from the bottom of the deck, and now you tell us and you confess that you didn't turn in fast enough.
Well, you know, I don't know whether they were doing that on purpose. Maybe they were. Maybe Mike and you know, Eric and those guys were doing that on purpose and holding out on me. But when they called me to pit or follow Kanan was the words, I was way past pit lane, man. There was no coming back in. So I got to, you know, the radios work for a change, which was quite nice. But the call came a bit late. But you know, it worked out fantastic. I'm, you know, bloody happy for the championship, to be honest.
Let's check in with Vince Welch. Vincey?
Well, and Scott Dixon's teammate Dan Weldon. It's a 1-2 finish for Targa Chip Ganassi Racing, and maybe you're one of the guys glad to see the rain tonight. Did you not feel like maybe you had a second-place car this evening?
No, absolutely not, Vince. It was, you know, one of those days where the car was just way too comfortable. I had a lot of drag in the car, and you know, really didn't have that much speed. But yeah, you know, yeah, Chris Simmons, I'm sure. I don't think Chip said he made the decision to stay out, but I'm pretty sure that's Chris Simmons. He's pretty gutsy, and all those guys on the pit stand. So it's a good result nonetheless. They say it's better to be lucky than good, and that's certainly the case tonight, because there's some disappointed guys that did have better cars. But I think this rain is being powered by Energizer batteries, which is good for both Scott and I tonight.
Congratulations, Dan Weldon. Second place, by the way, as we get ready to toss it to Brian Pedigo. Dan Weldon just told me he's agreed to an extension with Targa Chip Ganassi Racing. Hasn't signed it yet, but he's agreed to terms. Bree?
Vitor Meira in his camo gear still from last week. Vitor, what an exciting run it was for you. As high as 3rd at one point. You finished the night in 6th because of the rain. What are your feelings?
You know, after the bad stretch that we had, I think I feel pretty good. And the Delphi National Guard car tonight was very, very good. Everybody was having a hard time in traffic, and I mean, and we were just catching from 15th to 3rd. And again, Delphi National Guard car was very good tonight.
Scott, Marty, it was an encouraging run for the Panther team.
Yes, and we'll be heading to the road course, and Vitor can run the road courses as well. Maybe it'll happen at Mid-Ohio. We'll talk about the points, and we'll look down the road when we return. ESPN's presentation of the IndyCar 200 at Nashville, brought to you by Firestone, the first name in Indy racing. Well, this one's cut 29 laps short, but for Scott Dixon, it is a big bonus. The win, his 4th of the year, puts him 63 markers ahead of Helio Castroneves, 69 ahead of teammate Dan Weldon, 81 ahead of Tony Kanaan, and Danica Patrick moves from 7th up to 5th, while Marco Andretti drops from 5th to 7th. You can chat with Scott Dixon at ESPN.com. Just go to search and type in Indy Chat at 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. That's 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. See you next Sunday at 1:30 Eastern on ABC for the Honda IndyCar Grand Prix at Mid-Ohio. Coming up next, it's Baseball Tonight presented by Chase, and on ESPN2, Mopar Mile High NHRA Nationals qualifying. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Congratulations again to our winner, Scott Dixon. For our entire ESPN crew, I am Marty Reed. Until we meet again, good night, everybody.